of God.
That's what Alireza was saying before the match started as well. It's going to be tough. Magnus will give you very few chances. It is critical that when those chances come by, you have to instantly take them. And this might be the first time we saw him definitively grab one of those with both hands.
Forget Falcon, he's going to feel like a phoenix right now, the way he rose from the ashes in that game, Alireza. Still a shake of the head, but he knows he's back with a vengeance. Game on.
And this is the confidence you need, right? When you're playing against Magnus, everything that happened in set 1 is now behind Alireza Firouzja. With that big win, this is going to be some match now. He's got to be feeling good about his chances, but he needs to keep up the pace on the clock. Because had it not been for that one move blunder, this would have been a completely different storyline.
Now Magnus reacts to that shock, to that disappointment by playing a very ambitious opening. Magnus with white has played into one of the main lines of the semi-Slav defense. White has fianchettoed his bishop, but it's a gambit. The gambit accepted by Alireza Firouzja, who's captured on c4 and hopes to maintain that pawn phalanx there. He's up a pawn, he develops his bishop. Magnus needs to play very energetically to compensate.
But I like this because these are the kind of positions that get super complicated in the middle game, you know, where black does have the extra pawn and white plays for a big center, for piece activity and domination of trying to make sure that Alireza's pieces do not get into development. This last move makes Alireza push the B pawn and the C pawn as well moving forward. Looks extremely strong, but the base of that chain will be targeted by Magnus with A3.
This is such high-risk strategy for Magnus Carlsen. High reward as well, since black isn't fully developed. But if he cannot strike in the next few moves, Magnus, he's going to regret allowing black this beautiful protected passed pawn formation. Alireza, he smells weakness and he's going for it here.
It's very rare that we see a pass pawn on the third rank for black this early on in a game. Obviously, we're still quite early on here, and I'm sure positions like this have been studied a fair bit before. We're very much in the opening, but that's got to be really uncomfortable.
Especially after what just happened, you know, and Magnus does not want to take this to a third set.
No.
He wants to get this done this time, but for that, he needs to find a chance to get a win in. Only 3 more games remain for Alireza to neutralize this match, to equalize the match and force that tiebreaker set. And what he's done so far, you know, it shows that he doesn't want to play KG anymore. The confidence he needed, it's in the bag.
That's interesting as well, isn't it? Because with the confidence there, it's a weird situation where 3 draws actually gets Alireza the second set. But I don't think anybody here or on the analyst desk or in the audience or anywhere are betting that Alireza wants to play safe and get 3 safe draws. That is not going to happen, right? That's just not his brand of chess. It's not where he excels, and he wants to show us more of what just got him that victory in game number 1.
Exactly. He has fully woken up Alireza, and I love this change in strategy from him. Rather than just try to defend stoically, solidly as black and allow Magnus to try and grind him down, he's gone for one of the most ambitious variations you can play against these queen's pawn openings. Magnus now pausing. It feels like both players are freestyling somewhat, just judging by the clock. This is the first time Alireza's been up on time at the 12 move mark in any game so far. That must be fantastic news for him.
Absolutely. And Alireza, he still has an extra pawn on the board, and that's a big pawn on c3. So for Magnus, he has to find a way to prove this opening idea that he went with. It's still a long way to go. The play often revolves around the squares the white knights have, the b6 point, the c5 point. At some moment, Magnus might try to win a bishop pair in the position to prove that compensation, and that bishop on g2, make sure that the knight on b8 does not come out in the game, at least for some time.
Alireza pausing to recapture with the pawn is maybe high risk, but it's also very, very high reward in this scenario. To take back with your bishop would get you closer to castling, but your passed pawn on c3 will probably drop in the near future. So I'm expecting this move is at least the move he wants to play from Firouzja.
It's also his style. But the fact that he's slowed down, you know, this is what we've been seeing this whole match, just his time management. It almost feels a player whose biggest forte is his intuition, his instincts. Somehow he's not being able to trust them. Exactly. Pawn takes pawn is what Alireza plays every single day. Whoa, he goes for another approach, gives up the bishop by himself.
Wow, maybe scared of any pins on the A file. He wanted to open up the black rook. The last move given an exclamation point, but the eval bar rises in Magnus's favor. It did feel a bit rushed. Normally you don't want to clarify the structure, especially giving white some nice central control here until the last minute. But there we go, and he's allowed Magnus forward.
And I love that move. Not only does it get the knight to b6 in positions, but it blocks the black bishop on f8. And now the white queen about to threaten that pawn on b4 via queen to b3, and that would be big trouble for black.
And we have to pull up a board here because Alireza Firouzja is going to spend a bit of time thinking, but he might have to find a genius move here to hold the balance. In this position, given a bit of time, whites are going to bring the queen out, and we see the bar rise. The queen's coming to b3 to pick off some pawns, but Alireza could have played bishop takes c5.
Wow.
The white knight is pinned, cannot recapture, and if the pawn takes back, then the queens would disappear from the board. And at the very end of the variation, b3, look at the pin on the a-file, look at the menacing pawns. This would provide full compensation to black, but wow, not spotted. We can't blame him for that. Superhuman that would have been, but now he might be finding himself in trouble instead. If the black pawns drop off on the queen side, Tanya, it's a huge advantage for Magnus Carlsen.
This is a beautiful position. If you're not defending that b4 pawn, and let's point out, the knight can't jump to a6 because guess what? That beautiful, stunning bishop on g2, the Catalan bishop, the Queen's Gambit declined bishop, call it what you want, is eyeing that c6 pawn. It's the most valuable piece here for Magnus. You can't let it activate there. If not knight a6, the only other move is queen to a5. But that also comes under fire once white moves the bishop away, the knight jumps forward. What is your queen even doing on a5? I don't think there's a way to defend this pawn.
Yeah, you could grab white's pawn in the center, I guess, but the black queen will be kicked around the board, and that doesn't feel healthy, especially with the black king still marooned in the center. No happy decisions here for Alireza. He's not a pawn grabber by nature. He won't want to get his queen out and lose more time there before getting castled, but he might have to. That's the only way.
Console yourself by saying actually grabbing that pawn undermines part of what is making white's position so strong at the moment, and rather than seeing it as pawn grabbing, you have to see it as something positionally to build on, right?
Another big moment for Alireza. Is he going to take the pawn? He does, and now we're expecting Magnus to bring out his bishop to attack the black queen. The black queen will want to retreat, and now after taking back the pawn, watch out, the white queen coming into b7 as well as the black pawn on c3 dropping off. Black cannot even castle, or maybe he can, because the queen to b7 looks like a double attack, and this is looking into the future, but we're headed in this direction, at least until this last move from Firouzja. It's hotting up this game now. Magnus senses his moment.
Queen to g4, and is white going to continue chasing that queen away, which defends that b4 pawn? Magnus, if he wins b4, he's not going to stop there. There's queen b7, the c3 pawn falls as well. And if you're able to neutralize the material deficit in the position as white with the two bishops, the bishop on g2 unchallenged for the rest of the game, it's advantage Carlsen.
Absolutely. I mean, look, that was the point that was made out of the opening here by Firouzja. I've got these monstrous pawns that are passed now on b4 and c3, and that's going to be how I force you to give up an advantage so that you can mop up those pawns. I need something in exchange for that. And right now, though, it feels like it's Carlsen who's batting him around a bit and will get to pick them up. If he's able to do that for free, and don't forget Firouzja still has to castle, this is very much looking like initiative firmly lost by the black pieces.
Yeah, just to point out, the black queen could not have taken a pawn on e2, as the white knight would have jumped back, taking a pawn, hitting the queen, and opening up a line towards the black rook. So there was a poisoned pawn in that position, and Magnus, talking of pawns, goes munching. The first of black's pawns drops. Now he has to castle Firouzja. Unthinkable to do anything else. The black king needed to run to safety before it was too late. And can Magnus do more than just regain the material he gave up earlier?
Well, the one idea is the double attack that we earlier pointed out, queen to b7, but there is a defensive resource there. The black knight coming to d7, connecting the two rooks, and also making sure queen takes bishop isn't possible, and that's why maybe it does not work just in time there. So Magnus, with a lot of choices here, he could take the pawn back on c3, he could infiltrate with his own queen, or will he find some activity against black's offside queen on the right side of the board? He does take the pawn back, inviting a trade of rooks. Rook takes rook, on Magnus's term, will give him the a-file.
It's the first time in 15 moves that we've got level material again. It's crazy, these sacrifices, such long-term ideas by these top players. and ultimately Magnus emerges with a very small advantage.
Yeah, to be fair, when you compare the pieces, you go, actually, now that Firouzja's played knight bd7, the knights are on reasonable squares. The bishop is at least pointing towards a c5 pawn, which is a bit of a menace, but it's doing something useful. You can see the knight potentially coming into d5, but take a look at the bishop here from Magnus. The piece activity just feels a little bit stronger for white, and it feels like white has some more options. Not necessarily a winning position or anything like that, but it feels easier to play.
Easier to play, and Alireza pauses before moving the rook in the corner that's attacked. Does ultimately shift it and attack the white queen. Magnus is going to run away with that piece now, but the big question is whether black can take the c5 pawn next. If he restores the material balance, makes sure that it's only pawns on one flank, then Firouzja should be out of danger.
Well, there's also another pawn hanging on the board, the h3 one. Let's not forget about that. He's threatening c5, queen takes pawn as well, with some ideas of the knight jumping forward, maybe putting some pressure on Magnus's king. With this move, rook b8, first asking a question to Magnus's queen, where does he run?
Big moment, and I'm looking at the clock, I'm thinking this, again, is the best situation Firouzja's been in a while, and Magnus looks frustrated.
I think that's a great point. We're past move 20 now. I feel like so far in this match, there have been several instances where Firouzja's been down by 2 or 3 minutes on the clock by this point. That has not happened in this game. He hasn't got time to take solace from that at the moment, but we can see that this is a visible improvement from Alireza.
This is a completely shift in pace, you know, on the board, psychologically, on the clock, everything. This is a totally different match, a totally different set from what we saw earlier on in the day. And now Alireza about to get more time on the clock than Magnus for the first time in this match, as Magnus dips below the 4:23 mark, still hasn't made a decision of where to move the queen, 2 pawns under attack. Alireza, I think he's ambitious about his chances. Magnus moves the queen to f4. Be careful, the black knight can't take on c5, the rook on b8 is hanging.
Yep, great move by Magnus, maintaining some advantage due to the fact the black rook is so loose. But Firouzja now, at least he has a little bit of time, a few seconds, to mull over what to do. The move he wants to play is bishop takes pawn on c5, but some calculation needed. The black queen holding things together there might get hit. And Firouzja, big moment. He can't spend too long though.
Yeah, I'm trying to... Can he get away with bishop takes? It looks like he just about can, because maybe because the black queen is actually still on h5. It's easy to forget that it's still on the board, and it's a bit of a long-range piece there. So maybe that just about allows it to happen. But you're right, you can't take it with the knight. It has to be with the bishop.
Gonna point out, Magnus blundered a rook in the last game.
Oh, man.
Like you guys said, with the queen on h5, that's going to be the recapture of the bishop takes pawn. So possible, but something about that move Magnus does not like. He's perhaps also thinking about queen capturing the pawn on h3, the other one that's available, or maybe a rook slide over, hitting that bishop. A lot of options, but he's taking his time, Alireza is.
Yeah, you mentioned Magnus blundering a rook. He's done that a few times in recent history. He regularly blunders knights, I'm going to say. He blundered a knight against Hikaru in the final game, game 6 of their semi-finals. He blundered a knight against Firouzja in the previous encounter. It's always these knights on e4, knights on d2. It's always the same pattern that Magnus seems to have a blind spot. I'll just mention that here. Luckily, he's white, and luckily for him, at least, he's white. And his knight, for now, not under threat, but just watch out for that later. Firouzja has found some weakness, but this move, he spent nearly 2 minutes now, nearly half his time on this one turn. He does take the pawn.
Well calculated. Good that he worked that out, but so much time spent.
That's exactly the point. It felt like a 2 to 3 move calculation, right? So Alireza would have thought deeper. He didn't spend 2 minutes just figuring out that he's got queen takes bishop at the end of that line. There's something more to this position. He's trying to think, because every piece is loose right now. That knight on d7 defends the rook on d8. It can come under fire immediately with the move rook to d1.
And that sets a nasty trap. If the white rook does shift across to d1, black cannot play bishop takes bishop, as the white queen would be sacrificing itself on the b8 square just to break through onto the back rank with some checkmates. I don't know if Magnus Carlsen has spotted that. He's looking a bit deeper into the position, but let's check it out. The best move, rook to d1, attacking the black knight, undermining the bishop. Alireza Firouzja cannot play bishop takes bishop right now, because queen takes rook would end in a checkmate after the queen is recaptured. Look at this, a back ranker. The black king trapped behind its own pawns. Alireza Firouzja cannot trade bishops right now. It's a key moment. He needs to find another solution, but he's down to 2 minutes. He does block the queen's path. That was the only way to survive.
So tricky there by Magnus, setting up that big trap. Because if you're black, you really want to liquidate pieces here. You want to get those trades in, but not giving him the chance. E5 hitting the queen. Magnus with an inaccuracy there. Queen's off the board. And now Alireza can trade on E3, destroying Magnus' pawn formation.
Yeah, and this should be a drawn endgame. It's going to be bishop takes bishop. White's going to take the knight, the black knight. But rook and knight versus rook and bishop. Pawns are only on one flank of the board, only on one side. Knights are better than bishops. Firouzja is going to have to sit and suffer there for a long time. Only white can win. Magnus is now, I think, going to activate hustle mode. He's been reluctant to do it on the clock, but here we go. Can Firouzja hold what is a slightly unpleasant endgame?
I think he does it. He knows what's on the line right now, and you know, at the end of it, if he holds this position with black, that is a massive, massive thing for him. I mean, it's almost like a slight victory here. He gets white in the next turn. Alireza, he pushes the G-pawn, tying down black's king side. 3 pawns there. Bishop moves backwards. The knight's about to move forward. He first brings the king into the game.
Magnus grabbing space there with that pawn move to g5 to begin with, and he's going to start grinding, gets the pestle and mortar out. We've seen Magnus do this time and time and time again, but will he be able to convert something against what appears to be a little bit of a rejuvenated Firouzja? We've seen him pull out some unbelievable magic tricks in the last game, showing us some of his fantastic skill. We've also seen flashes of him breaking out of shall we say, the time-draining funk that he's been in, but there were still flashes of that where he did use a minute or two in the late middle game. But he is getting better at it, and you can feel the confidence starting to grow.
There we go, it's bullet time. The clock turns red for Firouzja. He needs to act quick. The white king is stepping up the board. This is what Magnus Carlsen calls anti-young player chess. He's killed the chance of white losing this game now. It's a race against the clock. Firouzja can't clarify the board though. He has no active plans as white steps forward.
And that's because of that 1 pawn on g5. It clamps down on those 3 pawns on f7, g7, h7. Any move by either of these pawns would lend black a huge weakness to deal with. Magnus, meanwhile, can jump around the board with his knight, now about to target the e5 pawn, defended by the bishop, but the knight comes further into the game, hitting the rook and the black f7 pawn, knight d6 in the air.
Knight is coming in, the white rook lands on the 7th rank first, followed by its knight. Black is in full defensive mode, all backs to the wall here. Firouzja needs to break out, he's got 40 seconds, you cannot sit still and do nothing anymore. Magnus will just bide time and go for you. And there we go, he does trade pawns. Here he needs to start trading rooks. Firouzja, he needs to get everything off the board within his last 30 seconds. We're going to see another race against the clock, but a totally different scenario this time, when it's going to be difficult to force Magnus Carlsen to blunder.
And this time, Magnus is going for Firouzja's clock. He's down in this set. He has to maximize his chances. He's not going to shy away from flagging him anymore in this match.
Magnus needs to make some quick moves. He has a 2-minute time advantage. It's going to be so difficult for Firouzja here. The black rook was almost trapped, creating some luft there, some escape squares. Black king shuffling. Magnus is pushing pawns. Black rook forced back. Still so unpleasant here, Tanya. The white knight dominates the bishop.
And no more pawns can be traded. And look at that. Magnus Carlsen, he wins a pawn. The first big advantage. He's converted his strategic points into a material advantage.
We go Firouzja creating some counterplay, hitting the white knight, which has to be defended now by the king or the rook. 1 pawn up, but it's not about the clock, about the pawns here. It's about the clock. Keep an eye on the red on your screens. Alireza Firouzja needs that fire, needs the speed.
He does, but will that even be enough with 11 seconds? And Magnus just playing this on endlessly, gives a check, drives the black king away. Magnus Carlsen winning now. He's trapped the bishop, and Alireza knows he resigns. Magnus Carlsen back in set 2.
Resignation, there we go, with 8 seconds left to go. The speed was incredible. The number of moves that were played in the last 30 seconds of that game, formidable, but not enough to stop the tide that is world #1, Magnus Carlsen. He fights back, and set 2 is now level at 1 apiece.